that most mistakes in the hiring process are not made by hiring the wrong person. Most mistakes are made before the hiring process starts.
Right. Whoever is recently finished their educations, either the bachelor degree or the master degrees, the people doesn't want to hire a fresher. They don't want to spend much time to train them because they are thinking about the cost. Okay, so how that young generations, the young people can survive in this area? Why the companies are paying more who has a less experience than us?
Elon Musk still sleeps on people's couches and still sleeps in the office.
Yeah.
Have them, everybody back to office, and I'm going to look over your shoulder to make sure that you're working. Those cultures are changing. Those cultures are becoming dinosaurs.
The career you have today might not even exist tomorrow. Welcome back to the Sami Show. I'm your host, Samir. Today I'm joined by the Stephen Shortt, a global career and a talent strategist who helps the people adapt, grow, and thrive in a rapidly changing world. We are diving into how AI is reshaping the jobs, why skills matter more than the title, and why career fulfillment is real currency of a success. So stay tuned because these conversations could help you to protect your future. So good morning, Stephen. Welcome to the Sami Show. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, today is a very wonderful things that today I got a chance to talk to you and we're gonna discuss about the career as nowadays, as you know that how the world is changing in a fast track, right? That the future proof is the most important thing for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
What does it truly mean to you about the future proof of a career? And does it really sounds realistic today, now in a fast changing world?
Yeah, it does absolutely, because if it didn't, then why would any of us bother? So, what for me the most important skill that we can all develop to be future proofed is curiosity. Because if we're curious about the changes, if we're not running away from them, if we're not scared of them and intimidated by them and trying to stop them, then we can actually upskill ourselves, we can learn more, we can be interested and curious, and then we can grow ourselves, because as the market grows, we are going to grow. The same is true of almost anything. If you are able, and I'm a firm believer that people can grow into a career, they might not have the experience right now, or they might not have exactly the skills right now, but they can grow into a career. By the same definition, then a career as it grows can outgrow you if you don't grow with it. So we have to constantly be looking at, how do I need to grow in order to be, I mean, we can call it future proof, but actually, how do I need to grow to make sure that I still have a fulfilling and rewarding career as the career and as the industry evolves?
I agree. But right now, what is happening that every giant companies, as you know, that Google, let's take a Google, Microsoft, JP Morgan's, everyone has a big laid off, okay, from the last 1 years, as you saw.
Mhm.
Even that I'm in IT career,
And I suspect there's going to be a lot more in the next year as well.
definitely. So that's why the future career, that's why I'm thinking that future career is the most risky part right now. Because many of my friends also that they are working in the Googles and many giant companies. Do you believe that from the last 1.5 years, they didn't even get a single interview call? So how they going
So
to secure their future in this
So there's a
particular
couple
area?
of there's a couple of things here that I think are really important. So
Mm,
yes, there are a lot of big companies that are letting people go. Some of it is either automation or downsizing, or the market has shifted, or whatever reason. And yes, there are people who are working in those companies who, when they think their career is only in that company, yes, that's going to be a problem. But that is not necessarily their only career. So there was a time when there was a huge outcry. I mean, in Ireland in the 90s and the early 2000s, everybody was doing computer courses because computers were the future.
correct, I agree.
Now computers are maybe less of the future, like the coding and the programming in Java and C++ plus plus and all of this kind of stuff that I was exposed to when I was a student.
Mm,
It's less relevant, and I've had to adapt and I've had to move. And then moving now could be understanding AI, or even not even getting to not even being a programmer in AI, but learning how to use AI in other areas, because it is absolutely true. AI is having an enormous impact and is going to have an enormous impact in the future of work. But it's not the only impact. It's not the only thing. And I, as an AI optimist, believe that it's going to create more careers than it removes.
Right.
So
But
for your friends who are in the big places, I think their career, they will still have a career. Their career might change and they might have a new title or a new focus, which is an offshoot of what they're currently doing, so long as they're able to grow and adapt themselves into that area that they're interested in.
I agree. But sometimes, it's difficult. Suppose let's consider that every giant company, they are paying so much high salary to that particular employees, right?
Yep.
Suppose they are gonna laid off. Now, after certain times, they are expecting more, whatever they have, right? They're expecting more. They don't
Yep.
want to come down. So it's the perspective of the peoples also. They don't want to let them down. They don't want come in the lower salary. That's another issue.
Yep.
Another issue that I found right now, that problem for the freshers. Okay, that whoever is recently finished their educations, either the bachelor degree or the master degrees, the people doesn't want to hire a fresher. They don't want to spend much time to train them because they are thinking about the cost. Okay, so how that young generations, the young people, can survive in this area?
So there's a couple of things. Just on the other thing, the other point that you made about, yeah, people are used to certain high salaries and they want to maintain those high salaries. Yeah, everybody wants more money. No, I don't think anybody on the planet thinks that they're earning enough money for the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
And there are things. So my mission in life is to make the world a better place with happy people and fulfilling, rewarding careers. For me, the salary, the actual amount of money that you're getting, is not the only defining piece of a rewarding career. Yes, it's nice to have that money and you can live in a really cool place. But also, if you're doing something that you're really passionate about, if you're doing something that you're actually interested in, maybe not living in San Francisco or maybe not living in New York City or somewhere like that can be as appealing to you because you have a different quality of life, but you're maybe earning 70% of what you were earning in one of those places, but your quality of life is much higher and you're doing something that you're passionate about. And I think that to me is a much more rewarding and a much more fulfilling way to think of your career, not necessarily geographically where you are, but that's
Right.
a different thing.
Yeah.
When we talk about the grads and the recent people coming in and they need to get the experience, I'm not as familiar because I think a lot of the big companies are still in Ireland anyway. They're still hiring grads. They're still bringing in grads because it's cheaper to bring in grads than it is to bring in people with the experience. But yeah, they've got to train them up and they've got to spend that amount of time. Whether the grads then want to go and do, okay, I'm going to learn something in a smaller role in a smaller business with the idea of finally going to Google or finally going to the Facebooks or Meta or whatever, depending on what career trajectory that they want, or they can always say, look, I'll take less money. I want to be a graduate role. You're offering 100K. I'll take 90 for the first 2 years because I want to get that experience and get in the door. People don't think about it in terms of that, but all the time when people are looking at their first job and their job offer, they're always taught, how can you negotiate up in your salary, because the salary is the only thing that people are actually interested in. If you were to say, here, I tell you what, I'm willing to take a 10% pay cut if I'm helped to fast track to a certain area, because this is an area that I'm really interested in and I can really see my growth area in this. You set yourself apart straight away from everybody else in the pack who's just gone, okay, yeah, I'll come in, but I'm so awesome, I want 110 grand instead of 100 grand. I want 10% more. Whereas if you were able to say, look, I have a really clear vision of what I want to do and where I want to go because that's what I'm interested in and that's what I'm good at, it could help you to get onto a track which other people are simply not on.
I agree. But do you believe nowadays that degrees become irrelevant and the hiring is mostly focused on the skill base?
Yeah, so I think there is a huge move towards skill-based recruitment. I think degrees. So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with degrees. I think once you have a certain level of knowledge, whether that's in a PhD or a degree or something like that, it's whether you've spent the time really getting deep into that one area. If you have a PhD in something, so you've spent a decade maybe learning everything there is to know about it. But you've said it yourself, the world is moving so fast and careers are changing. So what you spent 10 years getting to be the defining expert on has changed. So the market has changed, the technology has changed, or I actually know somebody, for example, who had studied a huge amount and they were building their own large language model. They were building their own AI, they were building their own systems, and they were building an entire business of training off that. And then ChatGPT comes out and basically blows everything they've done out of the water. So they've spent all of this time. So they had to pivot, they had to adapt and go, okay, how do we just work with ChatGPT? Because that is already 10 times better than what we were building. So how do we leverage that and how can we think adaptably and be able to pivot to what we were doing? So I think once you have, for me, the most important thing is curiosity. The most important trait is curiosity. If I have a little bit of knowledge in how to do a little bit of computer programming, enough to build something basic or understand what the different components of the code make, and then I can work with teams and work with other people who know a little bit more about that area and a little bit more about that area, or even working with ChatGPT or an AI to help me to form these bits to make new bits of code. I think that is far more relevant and more interesting for companies than people who come in and go, well, I know everything and that's not going to work.
Right.
So personally, I think there's a fine balance between the two. I think you do need people that have had a large amount of training in certain areas, because I don't want my heart surgeon to be a keen amateur that's done a little bit of stuff online and digs into me. So I do want some amount of training, but when it comes to other stuff, I think that there is a lot more scope than there ever has been before for people who are just curious and smart.
So that's another question, that the same thing that many of my friends wanted me to ask you.
Okay.
So what is happening in their company? Let me tell you that in many companies it is happening. So let's say that I have the more than 15 years of experience. Okay, I'm earning that 150K per year.
Yep.
Okay. Now what happened that any new persons are coming who has very less experience. Let's say the 5 years of experience, but let's say that he has working on the front end or the back end, only the one technology. Either let's consider the AI. Okay. Now the company is giving more than 200K to that particular person. Okay. Now every senior person has thinking about that wide happening, that I have the 15 years of experience, even I can learn the same technology, even I working in the both front end, back end, everything, right? The UI also. That why the companies are paying more who has a less experience than us.
So I think, obviously it depends on the company, it depends on so many nuanced areas, but you said that you're one of the people might argue to say, I've got 15 years experience and I could learn that technology. But if they haven't learned that technology, then what the company is actually paying a premium for is somebody who knows how to use that technology, because they can use that technology. The company can then use that technology to leverage future stuff. If it was the case when I was in college, the amount of people who could charge a fortune for building a basic website because they knew how to do basic HTML or even CSS and dynamic websites, they could charge a premium. Now, you can't really, unless you're doing something really special, most people can do it a fairly even job. So it doesn't command the same level of salary as it did 20 years ago. So the people who are coming in now with that experience to be able to say, okay, well, I can implement AI and I can do other bits and pieces because I've spent the last 3 years working with AI, even though I've only been working in tech for 5 years. That's still 3 years more experience than somebody who's, as you say, a front end and a back end. If that person, and look, it's a catch-22, that person's working full time. They don't have the ability to spend 3 years working with it. Right. But if they spent a little bit of time working on it and they're able to specialize a little bit more, then they could be then become that valuable person. But in 5 years' time, that skill might not be as relevant anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book I want to write, or some things that I want to share, probably in a book called Spectrum of Skills, because I think it's a better way of looking at our future career paths to have a spectrum of skills, to have a variety of different things that we're good at, rather than having a laser focus. Because if we have a laser focus, we're more prone to technology coming in, to AI being able to replace that one thing that we're awesome at, and we don't have anything else to lean back on. So I think that there might be a case, and there are people who have these skills now because they've been working on them for the last 3 years, that right now they're the golden boys and girls, and they're the ones that everybody wants. But once more and more people, once it becomes more mainstream, that premium goes down, and there'll be a premium on something else. And there may come a point in a couple of years' time, maybe 5 beyond years' time, where actually having that jack of all trades bit and having that adaptability is the bit that's going to have the premium, that I can actually manage this and that and that. I can manage this team and this team and this team because I understand what's happening on the front end, on the back end, and on the UX, for example. There is you've heard the phrase a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah.
You know that expression? So that's the quote that everybody uses, but it's actually not the full quote. The full quote is a jack of all trades is master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Right, agree.
So that's even in the old days, they recognized that having more than one skill set was more beneficial to you in the long term than having that one singular focus. And I think the people that are coming in now that are commanding those bonuses or higher salaries because they have the experience in the thing which is helping drive the business at the moment, they command that extra amount. But the more other people upskill themselves and are curious about it and develop their own skills in it, the more likely they are to get those premiums as well.
So according to you, that what is the most important thing, the high paying skills or the job security?
According to me, so I'm an entrepreneur, so job security isn't really a thing. So according to me, and again, it really depends on your personality. So, I mean, there's different personality scales about things like security. And there are people who want to be absolutely sure, I know where my next paycheck is coming from, and I'm working for a big organization. I don't necessarily need to have massive amounts of money, but I need to know that for the next 10 years that I'm going to be getting this amount of money is going to hit my paycheck, my balance, my bank account every month. Then there's other people who are going, hey, I'll take a chance. I'll get equity in this company because I think it has a potential to hockey stick in 2 years' time, and I'll sleep on my buddy's couch for 6 months, and then I'll eat ramen and do all these other startup things. So it's such a personal decision, and it also depends on your stage of life. I mean, Elon Musk still sleeps on people's couches and still sleeps in the office.
Yeah.
he definitely doesn't do it because he's looking for more security.
Yeah.
So it really is a personal choice of where you are in your life, what you want to do and what you want to risk. The older we get, traditionally, the more risk averse we get.
I agree. So do you believe that AI is a threat for the current opportunity growth?
I don't think AI is a threat. I think AI is going to cause massive disruption. I think AI is going to cause a lot of industries to shrink, but I think it's going to create far more jobs than it removes. If we think back to every single innovation, even when the internet came out, libraries and bookstores, they hated it. They wanted to get rid of it. When fridge freezers were invented, the people who had a huge living making ice, going and finding ice and transporting it back in America, they were up in arms. When the car was introduced, when Ford really mastered the Model T and the mass production of the car, everybody at that stage, 85% of industries were either supported or based on horses. Within 15 years, that changed on its head. And all of the people that were involved in rearing horses, working with horses, developing everything to do with horses, hated it. But those people all found jobs. They retrained. They were able to find other areas of interest that were diversions of what they were already doing and found things that they were able to do. So I think AI is going to allow us to have that level of innovation and disruption again.
Yeah, maybe that job could be the different, as you know, that whenever the computer invented and the engineers will come out,
Yeah.
the different kind of jobs has been invented, like SEOs, the graphic designers, everything.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
When we studied that at that time, we don't have that kind of a jobs, that we are just looking for the engineers. That's it. Now that
Correct. Yeah.
within the engineers that we have the different kind of jobs. Similarly, that in the AI too, it could be have the different kind of jobs like a prompt
Yeah.
engineers and AI models, AI agents kind of things. I think that could be another thing. Okay, let's jump into the career mistake and the decisions. So, what are the most common career decisions people regret later in life, and why don't we learn from them?
The most, one of the most heartbreaking things I see is when I have adults, young adults, fresh out of college, maybe 2, 3 years out of college, and they're lamenting the fact that they actually hate their career. They really don't enjoy it.
I agree.
And the reason that a lot of people get into this is because it's an easy way to understand if you were good at this subject in school, that's what you should study in college, without really any thought to whether that is something that you're going to find a rewarding career or not. So we have people, I mean, it's well-meaning advice, but it's bad advice to follow your passion. You'll never work a day in your life. It sounds great, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
So the example that I give, and I give a lot of young people this advice. So let's say a lot of young people are interested in politics. Right? They're interested in fixing the world, and they have they think politics is broken and they want to fix the world. So they go and they study politics because they have an interest in politics. But actually, what they have an interest in it, but they don't have a passion for it. So they end up being in politics and studying politics and international political science and political history and political this and political that. And they end up really not enjoying the world of politics because they have an interest in it, but they're not interested in it. So it's like being in love with something and loving something. There's two different ways of looking at this. Whereas if they were, let's say, natural communicators, and they might think to themselves, I like being a politician and giving speeches because they're good at communicating and they're good at storytelling. That's only a part of what politicians do. The rest of it is behind closed doors and making deals and negotiating and dealing with paperwork and dealing with the tedium of boring, in my opinion, meetings and stuff gets done in bureaucracy. So actually what that young person should do is look at, okay, I like storytelling, I like talking, I like being able to share communicative ideas. They could become an extraordinary marketeer or copywriter or video presenter or journalist or something like that. And they could find in the day-to-day actual operations of the job and the career, I really enjoy this. I am in love with the process of this. But I'm really interested in politics. So in my spare time, I can volunteer with local politicians that I support, and I can give them some support for the storytelling and the bits that I'm good at. But actually, I find my fulfillment and my rewarding career in communications. So I think one of the things that happens is a lot of people either they follow the subjects that they were good at without really thinking about what's the long-term implication of what careers that leads to, or B, they have a romanticized version of what a career is or what a job is. And when they go into it, they get slapped in the face and go, this is not what I thought it was. Teaching is a huge example of this. People who get burnt out of teaching, they have this romantic view of students love you and you're doing fun stuff in class, when actually a lot of it is disciplining kids and going through the same stuff and the same material, and there's repetition. For some people, that's perfect. That's what they want. But for others, it's a romanticized view, so they get burnt out and they hate it.
So do you also believe, I agree, but sometimes it happens that even sometimes I feel that too, that I am in a mouse trap.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that from the last 15, 16 years, I'm doing the same work again and again. The technology is changing rapidly. So you have to curious every time, that you have to learn technologies every time, right? Even the many people sometimes doesn't know that what they want to do in their life. Okay. Even though they are smart. So do you believe why that smart people are getting stuck in their career?
So we've built a framework called the Ideal Career Framework, Finding Your Ideal Career. And it's a free, it's a website, findingyouриdealcareer.com, and it walks you through the whole thing. The idea is you start off with your ability, your interest, and the demand. So those are the three big things. So what are you good at? What's your ability? What are you interested in? What actually switches you on? What do you find enjoyable? And then demand. Is there market demand for it? And we think of this as a Venn diagram of three interconnecting circles. So if you have the ability for something and the interest in doing it, so you're able to do it and you're interested in doing it, but there isn't a lot of demand. People aren't going to pay you to do it. That's typically a hobby.
Right.
If you have the interest in something and there's a demand for it, but you don't have the ability, you're not good at it, that's a dream. A lot of the time we think of like a professional footballer or a musician or something like that. They're interested in it. They just don't necessarily have the talent. Then when you have the ability to do something, so you're able to do the job and there is demand, somebody's willing to pay you for it, but you really are not interested in it, that's a job.
Right.
What we want is to where all three of those combine. Now, you can become interested in your job. The demand can change and your hobby can be a full-time career, or you can build the skills to find that Venn diagram. But what we want is for people to then find where those three intersect, and that's your starting point. That's your short list of careers. Then you zoom out when you have that short list of careers, and which are the ones that you're most enthusiastic about. That's the E for ideal. What are the areas, what are the things, which are the careers that really switch you on, that make you excited, go, yeah, that sounds amazing. I'd love to spend my time doing that. And then the final bit is you look at it through four different lenses. That's the L. The first is learning. Are you interested in learning more about this career? Are you interested in developing it? Are you curious about it? Do you want to develop more into it? The second is longevity. Do you see, I mean, you've been in this for 15 years. Do you see yourself for the next 10, 15 years? Or do you see this as, yeah, it'd be fun, but it's really a summer gig for me, or I'll kind of see where it goes. And that is important to know how you feel about the career. The third is lifestyle. Does it fit your lifestyle? Is it long hours? Is it in an office, or is it lots of traveling? Like, what do you want to do? How does that fit in with your life plan? And then leadership. Can you see yourself taking on leadership positions, or do you see yourself more as a team player? And how does that play out in terms of the direction you want to go in that career? Once you've gone through all of those, you have a short list of maybe only 3 or 4, maybe even only one career, which for right now, for the next 10 to 15 years, that's your ideal career, and that's what you want to spend your time doing. But it is completely feasible. Over time, your interests are going to change. Your abilities are going to change in different areas. The market demands will change. What gets you excited will change. Your life situation will change. Kids, mortgage, whatever. So that can adapt. And young people today, people in their 20s, 30s, and even their 40s, they have the ability to be able to swap their careers and still have long, very rewarding, very fulfilling careers over, they could have 4 or 5 before they come to the age of retirement. And young people today, they're going to be retiring a lot later than 65 because our health is getting better and all the rest of it. So we're able to explore all of these different areas. And I think that's the bit that's super important. And that's the bit that I try to get people to look at. Even if you've gone down this path for 15 years, you can still do something else. You can still change. You can take the transferable skills, the transferable knowledge, and you can apply it with the interest that you have in a different area.
So how do you manage, or how do you balance the financial needs with the personal passion when become a career?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I'm not going to be disingenuous and go, oh, well, you just changed career. There are absolutely, I mean, and you said that you feel like you're kind of in this trap. Like, I'm not going to assume anything, but there are people who get to a certain point in their career and they have a mortgage and they have kids in school and they have a car loan and they have a this and they have a that. And they have things, they go, I don't know if I can swear in your podcast, but you go, I'm stuck. I can't afford to go back and take a 30% pay cut to start at a slightly lower level to move myself up. And again, that is a decision that only you can make, whether you're able or whether you have the resilience, whether you have the fortitude to actually take that step back, move into a smaller house, get a crummier car for a couple of years, see about not going on holidays, see about not having that spend to cut back on those lifestyle things that we all need and we all accumulate over time, to see if you want to go and do something else. It's not easy. I'm not here to say, oh yeah, just do that. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing for me to just as a blanket thing say to people. But because my mission is to make the world a better place with happy people and fulfilling, rewarding careers, 60% of your waking time Everybody's 60% of your waking time is either at work or thinking about work.
Hmm.
So your waking time also includes time spent on the toilet, time going to the shops, time in traffic. So 60% of that time is spent either at work or thinking about work.
I
And
agree.
globally, 52% of people are unhappy in their jobs. And to me, those two statistics are miserable. So I always would encourage people to see what they can possibly do to make that change, to find a fulfilling, rewarding career for them, even if it means taking a slight step down in their salary, even in the short term, to be able to get themselves onto a path that actually makes their heart sing.
I agree. I totally agree. And definitely that I'm gonna that visit that particular site that you talk about.
Okay.
Can you just repeat that whatever the web what
Yeah. So it's findingyouриdealcareer.com.
okay. I'll definitely go and I'll check it out. I'll check
Cool.
my career. So when the peoples are leaving the job, so how do you know whether you are leaving the job or is it a problem in really you?
So is it a problem in you? So when I sit with clients a lot of the time, they enjoy the job, they don't enjoy the culture, or
Yeah.
they don't enjoy the job, but they enjoy the people. So there's different things for different arguments. You could have somebody who's a phenomenal marketing manager, for example,
Hmm.
and they're working in a tech firm, and they're really not happy because it's the tech firm is so kind of cutting edge and they're always pushing the boundaries and they always have to be coming up with social media stuff and they have to be this one that and what their skill set is or what they're interested is maybe longer form, more thought out pieces, and maybe they would be better instead of leaving marketing completely, they could be better changing industry and they could go to a more staid, a more traditional thing that you don't need 27 blog posts, 27 social media posts. You need actually one well thought out Medium post that talks about the benefits and the assessing the industry and understanding where that industry, where that person's individual interests lies.
Hmm.
The same, you could actually be in the right industry, you just might have the wrong culture in your organization. So you could have, again, keep with a marketing person, you could have a marketing person who's working in retail, but actually the company that they're in, their boss or the leadership structure is very competitive and always out to get each other, even though they're in a high touch environment. If they go to a different retailer or a different retail type organization where they have a much more collaborative environment and a much more innovative environment, that person could be a much better fit. But you might have people who are highly results driven who are better off actually in that highly competitive, get it out type of environment.
Hmm. So
So again, it's really understanding who you are
hmm.
and what you're interested in. That
What-
gives you so much more clarity as to which direction you should look at.
yeah, even throughout my careers that within the 15 years I have changed more than 10 jobs. So
Mhm.
mostly that is happening that I left my man because of my manager or
Yep.
the culture, as you know.
Yep. It's huge. But
Yeah.
there is, my argument is there's no such, I mean, we take out psychoses and we take out mental illness and things like that, but there is no such thing as a bad personality. There's
Right.
simply a bad fit. So there are environments that you, with your unique personality, is going to really thrive in, and there are there are other environments that might have, on paper, be the same size company, same industry, same resources, but the culture is different, and you're just not going to fit. And that's something which is really important as well.
Yeah, so let me just tell you about the experience that I faced one time that in a
Okay.
one of the HR interview that he asked me that why do you want to leave the current job? As I said that when you are hiring the people, what you are expecting from the employee. He said that good work, that it should be the gel with the team. Say I agree. When the employees is giving you the performance and if you are not rewarding, then what that should be the expectation from the employee also, right? That they are working hard for the more than 8 hours a day. They are spending more times in the company rather than with the family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even they are expecting much, right? Then if you're not rewarding to that employee who work hard for you, only work for you, so that's why the people is leaving your job, right? So if you're not thinking about the company why you are sorry, company is never thinking about the employee, then why the employee is thinking about the you?
So it should be the vice versa. So I didn't give the answer. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how
well,
it is relevant.
I mean, I also think that there is a real shift in
Right.
how companies think about their company culture, because I think a lot of people, they're seeing, especially things like remote work, because AI is obviously going to have a massive impact, but there are also lots of other things in the future of work, and one of them is remote work, and one of them is the digital nomads,
Hmm.
where people have the option and the ability to work in a company where they've never physically been in,
Hmm.
or they might be fully remote from day one. The business might be fully remote, and teams don't actually meet. And again, those are areas. I have a friend who has a great company who, if you have fully remote team, you might go onto their website
Hmm.
and go, okay, we want to do an annual retreat for all of our team, but we have 2 people in America, 2 people in Poland, 1 person in Singapore, 2 people in Australia, 2 people in Cape Town, and 1 person in Malta.
Hmm.
We want to meet on this date. That website will then go and scrape all of the different information that exists on the different airlines
Hmm.
and tell you, okay, on that date, the cheapest place for you all to fly to is Ibiza or is Madrid
Oh,
or is, because and again, this is an industry that would not exist were it not for the remote work. So this is an area where there's more jobs being created because of this change. So
right.
that's why I think that there's going to be all kinds of innovations. But if you're thinking that I need to manage people and I need to just have them everybody back to office and I'm going to look over your shoulder to make sure that you're working, those cultures are changing. Those cultures are becoming dinosaurs, and
Oh,
people are going to leave those cultures and go to the more asynchronous and open cultures,
hmm.
which will allow people, I think, to have a better view of what the company culture should be like. So to your point, when you're saying I left because the company wasn't paying as much attention to me, I think there is going to be a lot more focus on this. And one of the leaders that is going to emerge as somebody who is fundamental and instrumental in running a good company is an inclusive leader, an inclusivity leader. And how do we get the team to work together, not just focus on results, but actually how do we get people to work together?
Yeah, even after the COVID, the whole working culture has been changed, right?
Yeah,
Everyone is working on the remote. But right now, what happened that every company wants to come, ask employee to come in the office, right?
yeah.
And now you are hiring the more people also, right? So you have the more experience. So do you believe that the working from home culture is better than the going office?
Again, it's a real consultant answer. It depends on the individual. So I have half of my team are
Hmm.
remote.
Okay.
Half of my team, I think a third of my team don't even live in this country. They're working remote, and we make sure that we have good conversation, good communication. We have regular check-ins, we have scheduled check-ins, and we have impromptu, informal things.
Hmm.
But again, we have meetings at certain times, and that's when people have to be on a call because that's when we share information.
Correct. Yeah.
But if somebody then is going, okay, well, I'm meeting friends for a coffee, so I'm going to have a 2 hour coffee lunch or lunch break, but I'm going to be editing videos until like 8, 9 o'clock in the evening.
Hmm.
Okay, like it's ready for tomorrow morning. It doesn't matter whether it's done at 5 o'clock or it's done at 9 o'clock, so long as it's done for 8 o'clock the next morning, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And understanding that flexibility, I think, is an important part of creating a culture where we're hiring adults, like we're working with adults, we're professionals. We
Yeah.
might be professionals in shorts and sandals on a beach, but we're still professionals who are going, this is what we expect, this is what we're working towards. I'm going to leave it to you to understand when you need to prioritize what we need and when you need to prioritize what you need, so long as we agree, you and I are agreeing that by the end of this week, you will have done this, I will have done this, because ultimately it leads to what we're trying to accomplish in the year.
Hmm.
Perfect. Do you need anything? Let me know. Other than that, you do it.
Hmm. But as a
And I
company
think
owner,
that's a
what do you feel about that one? What is the better thing that everyone should come in the office and making a big team, or that you should make a vast team around the world having that work from home culture?
again, this my personality
I'm
is much more
I'm thinking
flexible.
about your
So
perspective as you
yeah,
are
yeah. So
working in the company.
from my perspective, me personally,
Hmm.
um, I like interacting with people.
Okay.
I like talking to people. That's why I do podcasts like this.
Yeah.
So I like having conversations. So I like it when people are in the office and we can have a coffee. But I also like it when I'm at home, working on something, doing some deep research or researching a video or researching a blog post or a book or something like that, that I don't have that interruption. I also like to travel, and I travel a lot for my work, for speaking and for facilitating and emceeing and things like that. So the ability for me to be able to have Slack open, that it's a like I was in Hawaii for the Global Leadership Conference 3 weeks ago. So I was able to kind of have an idea, put it in the Slack, something that came up during the conference, but I was able to put it in Slack, which means that I wasn't pinging everybody on their WhatsApp messages while in 3 o'clock in the morning Irish time.
Correct.
So they get that conversation. We can have a threaded conversation about exploring an idea, or a Google Sheet to go, hey, I've thought about this. What if we do this? But at the same time, then we can have scheduled meetings. So it was midnight my time in Hawaii. It was 10 o'clock here. We had our weekly meeting, so we can have those in person. We have a rule where if one of us is remote for a meeting, we're all on Zoom. Even if, let's say there's a meeting of 6 people, and 5 of us are physically in the office and 1 of us is remote, everybody is on their computer.
Right.
Everybody's on Zoom, because otherwise the people who are on Zoom feel excluded. So we make sure that there's a balance between the two. Personally, I don't mind if somebody's in the office or not in the office, but I know that there are some of my peers are very much no, everybody needs to be in. Now, in my previous role, I used to have an English language school. We had people from all over the world coming to Ireland to learn English. The teachers had to be in the room. There was no, like, they couldn't work from home. We had somebody from Japan and somebody from Saudi Arabia and somebody from Brazil coming to Dublin to learn English. The teacher can't be online. So there are some roles that you just got to be in person. So it depends on so many factors. Personally, I'm very open to the idea of remote work, hybrid work, and having those conversations.
Okay. So now let's have the questions about the hiring values and the red flags. So what are the 3 top qualities should every hiring manager look for beyond the resumes and skills?
Top 3 of every, oh wow. So I actually think this is, I think this is a mistake that people make, that most mistakes in the hiring process are not made by hiring the wrong person. Most mistakes are made before the hiring process starts.
I agree.
Because a lot of people don't actually, what I call, spec the career. So what are the skills you want the person to have? What's the personality you want the person to have? What's the experience and what's the culture? Spec. So skills, personality, experience, and culture. What are the things that you want somebody to have in order to do well? And you're going to have a very different type of person from in your marketing manager role as you are in your finance manager's role. So you want very different personalities. So you want very different things. So for your finance manager, you want them to be detail orientated. You want them to be essentially boring. You want them to be really head down and almost antisocial. But for your marketing manager, you want them to be creative. You want them to be not very prudent. They want to kind of deliver stuff quickly, and if it makes a mistake, they fix it later on rather than thinking things through. So I think the biggest mistake that a lot of hiring managers make is they don't spend the time actually speccing out the role properly.
I agree.
To understand what's the type of person we want. So I don't know if I have a top 3. For me, everything comes down to curiosity. I've mentioned curiosity before. So I think when people are curious, it helps them to learn more and to do more within the organization, to think about things in a different way. But for me, the biggest mistakes that hiring managers make is not speccing that role properly before they start even advertising.
Even recently that we found that sometimes that we wanted to search for the jobs. The job descriptions is really pathetic. I say pathetic, right? Because they didn't mention enough information for that. Let's say that they are looking for some AI guy, but they mentioned that the person should have the 10 years of experience. Now, can you believe that AI is coming within the 2 years? Now you are expecting that the person has more than 10 years of experience. Sometimes that we laugh that how that HR persons write this kind of job descriptions. Okay, now while you hiring what are the some underrated red flags candidate that most recruiters miss?
I don't know if, I mean, I can't speak for most recruiters, but for me, one of the biggest red flags is when a candidate spends a lot of time or really any time bad mouthing their previous employers for
Okay.
whatever reason. I think that there's a certain amount of a kind of a lack of professionalism, a lack of adult respect, even if it was a terrible environment, even if they really treated you badly, to be able to meet a perfect stranger and go, oh, it was terrible, that manager was stupid and he was this and we did. All I'm thinking is, as soon as we have an argument and you go somewhere else, or as soon as we have a disagreement about a KPI, or as soon as we have an issue where we hit a roadblock, you're going to be out there trashing me. So I'm not interested in this, because this is a real red flag. The other one, we actually run interview skills training.
Okay.
And one of the things that we tell interviewees is to relate and enthuse. They need to spend a certain amount of time telling the employer what their experience is in this area or something similar to this area, and enthusing that they actually want it. Because ultimately, every employer, when they're interviewing you, they really only want two things. Can you do this job, and do you want to do this job? That's really what they're interested in. So when you're interviewing somebody, if they're really giving non-answers, or if they're not really being enthusiastic about the role, that's a red flag. I mean, it could be, I just need a bum on a seat, I just need a body in the role. But really, do you want somebody who doesn't really want to be there, doesn't really have the curiosity, or doesn't have the enthusiasm to do what you're looking to do? So for me, I suppose those are the two, like bad mouthing other people and really not seeming to be interested in the role.
So when you're hiring the people, that suppose any candidate comes into your meeting room, do you feeling that vibes that, yeah, that could be the right person that you could be hired, or that he's gonna be hired today, or something that vibe that maybe is not fit in our culture? Should companies hire the people who fit in the culture, or we should go for the skills?
So that's whether it's an A player, a B player, a C player, or a D player. So you know this matrix?
Yeah.
So
No,
A player is
straightforward.
somebody who has the skills and gets the culture.
Okay.
A B player is somebody who doesn't have the skills but gets the culture.
Okay.
A C player is somebody who, doesn't have the skills but does have the culture, as a B player. A C player is somebody who has the skills but doesn't get the culture. And a D player doesn't have the skills, doesn't have the culture. Obviously, D players, no skills, not the right skills, not the right culture, gone completely.
Okay.
Most people, they fall into the trap of accepting the C players because they have the results, so they have the skills, but they become a cancer within the organization.
Agree.
So for me, hiring somebody who gets the culture, who has the interest, who has the right personality, who has the right vision, who has the right everything else, we can help them. If they're curious, they can learn how to be that A player. They can increase their skills. It's much more difficult, in my opinion and in my experience, to change somebody's personality to help them to fit in with the culture if they have the skills. So I would be saying, as hard as it is, as difficult as it is to get rid of the people who are maybe the good performers, but they are horrible on the organization, get rid of them. Because it's, depending on which research you look at, a bad employee, a bad hire costs anywhere from 3 to 5 or even more the time their salary, because they have a negative impact on the rest of the team, bringing their performance down. They have a negative impact on the impression of the organization, the reputation of the organization, and everything else. So I would say culture, and I mean, I get this whole skills-based thing, and for me, I think skills-based is a little bit short-sighted, because there's a lot of people saying you need to be hiring for skills and hiring for skills. That's great, but it's also got to be a culture. When they say skills, I understand you don't necessarily have to have 16 degrees and diplomas and PhDs to be able to work here. You need to be able to have the ability to do it, but that's not the only criteria. You've also got to have the personality and the culture fit.
So do you believe that hiring process is biased against the introverts also, like older professionals, or with the gap with that resume?
Again, it depends on whether people have spec'd the the role properly, it really does mean there are certain roles where you actually want introverts. There's a phenomenal company in I think it's Switzerland, where a guy who had I think it was his kid had a form of Down syndrome, and one of the things with Down syndrome is they're hyper focused and hyper detail oriented when they get into something.
Okay.
And he's a software. His company does software quality assurance checking, so he only employs people who have that particular bent in their either their autism or I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was people who were hyper focused.
Oh, okay.
And they were hired to go down through the code to spot all of the different things. So understanding what traits and what personality traits and what skills that are actually required to be successful in your role, that means that you could be saying, actually, I do want introverts or I do want extroverts. We did a thing for a large warehouse here where they had a huge turnover of staff in their packers and their pickers and their drivers. And they had a massive turnover of staff. And then we changed how they did their selection. And we were looking for people who were process orientated, who were looking for following a process from start to finish to be able to check off in their brain that this is what was done. And those are the types of people that were able to start unpacking, start packing a shelf, start putting stock away. And then in their brain, they got a little dopamine hit because, right, job done, move on to the next job. Whereas they were hiring people who were just thinking, listening to music and getting bored with the repetition of doing the same thing and the same thing. So understanding what the role requires and then hiring people according to that role, that's where you get successful.
Okay, sounds perfect. Okay, now let's talk about the Gen Z. This is the last topic. So right now, as you know that the CEO of the JP Morgan, that he has the issue that to work with the Gen Z people. He just said, fuck off all you, that you have to come in the office. Even though you don't like the jobs, I don't care, just you have to come in the office. Do you think that leaders are getting frustrated with working with the Gen Z people?
I think they're getting frustrated. I don't know if they're necessarily getting, I think they're blaming the Gen Z people, but I think they're getting frustrated with the pace of change because work environments are changing, cultures are changing, things are adapting. A lot of people are blaming the woke or the Gen Z or the this, that, and the other. But really, it's just change, and it's change that they're not comfortable with. So the old school way, and there are a lot of old school managers who are, we talked about it earlier on, like wanting to make sure you're in the office because they feel that that's a form of control they have over you to make sure that you're not goofing off. But actually, how many of these massive corporations where you have these pens of people in cubicles, people were not necessarily just sitting there pouring 110% into their spreadsheets and into their coding and into their emails and into their everything else. They still had downtime, and if their morale was affected because they had a long commute in, they're not going to feel as excited. Whereas if they actually get up and go, okay, I'm going to have a nice relaxed breakfast and then I can sit down on my laptop and I can answer all these emails, it could give you a completely different vibe, but it's a different way of managing. It's a different way of leading, which if you're not interested in adapting to that, you're going to push against it. To give you an example, I coached somebody recently who was a really, really senior person, like second, third in command of a huge, highly regulated pension company here. So high regulation. They're very processed, very traditional. Everything moves quite slowly in terms of their innovation because they have to protect a huge pension fund. Before COVID, he lives about an hour and a half away from Dublin, and he used to drive in and out every day, and he would be an hour and a half in traffic coming in, do his work, and an hour and a half driving back. And before COVID, for 30 years, perfectly happy doing it. There was just a fact of, I want to live in a nice house in a nice country area, I work in this business which pays me X amount. This is just the cost of doing this because I can't work from home. I go in and I do all my work. Since COVID, everything changed. And old school guy, like he's close to retirement. Old school guy. When I was coaching him a couple of weeks ago, he was telling me he only works 2 days a week in the office, 3 days a week from home, 2 days a week in the office.
Okay.
and he hates coming into the office. He gets so frustrated. He's like, why am I doing this? I can do all this from home. This is an old school guy because he gets the value of it.
Right.
So I think there are a lot of managers who just either don't get that benefit. They just see, I need to have those people in the office, and they can't shift that mindset in themselves. And they're blaming these Gen Zers because the Gen Zers are able to actually maybe get some of the work done a bit quicker. They might use an AI, they might use this, that, and the other. They've grown up with computers, they've grown up in a much more tech savvy world. And they're like, I really don't need to be sitting in a car for an hour and a half listening to drive time
I
radio
agree.
and people making stupid asinine jokes, where I actually could be at home doing some errands locally, picking up dry cleaning, doing the shopping, going for a walk, going for a jog, and then still be at my desk at 9 o'clock and be just as productive. So I think that there's a shift. But I think that the old school managers are the ones that are struggling with this. The old school, not necessarily the age, but also the mindset, the mentality.
I agree. I agree. Even right now, I have to go at least 3 days in office, and I have to drive 40 miles. So sometimes, due to traffic, it took more than 2 hours to reach there. So
Crazy. And you're in software, right?
yes, I'm in software.
So
Okay. So right now, the quiet quitting is really trending word. So do you think it's a failure of the leadership or a sign of a healthier work-life boundaries?
it's probably a mixture of both. I mean, there's quiet quitting for a number of reasons. Most people, like you mentioned it yourself, how many managers that you left as opposed to how many
Right.
jobs you left. So I think there's an element of quiet quitting that are people going, okay, well, if management aren't going to listen to me, or if management aren't interested in doing what I'm doing, I'm just going to see it out. That then becomes an issue of, I think, motivation or understanding, or maybe actually trying to let that person be free and let them go because they're not a good fit, they're not happy, they're not enjoyable, they're not finding this fulfilling and rewarding. I think it depends on why people are quiet quitting. If they're saying it's because of I want to work from home and they're not letting me work from home, so I'm just going to come in and be miserable, then yeah, that's a failure on the company's side of things. If it's that they're saying I actually really don't enjoy my work because I don't enjoy the nature of the work, but I can't leave because I'm on a good salary and I need to pay my bills, that's probably more on the individual side, that they're in the wrong career and they're quiet quitting because they're disillusioned with the role, but they don't want to take the chance of going somewhere else and doing something else and maybe not getting a job for a couple of months or doing something completely different. So I really think with all of these things, it's the same. I don't know if you're familiar with the term NEAT, not in education, employment, or training.
No.
So in America, there's about 4 million people who are aged between 18 and 24 who are this NEAT. They're not in education, not in employment, and not in training. They're just sitting around completely. They're not working, they're not in training, and they're not doing anything, and they're stuck. And again, there's so many different factors in this, but I wrote an article, I wrote a blog post, a website not so long ago, called Why You Hate Your Job.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different factors in why people hate their job. But actually, one that a lot of people don't talk about is the fact that you are in the wrong career for you. Like when we talked about this earlier, going into the wrong career, and you hate your job, you hate what you're doing, and you don't want to be there. But it's actually because you picked the wrong job, or you were pushed down a path, or you were, let's say, nudged rather than pushed, or you were encouraged down a certain path, which is not the right path for you. So you're never, like, it's just not for you. So you're not going to be happy. And then the quiet quitting. In the past, people would have just become this grizzly old grumpy person who was just hated being in work and hated everybody around them because they were in the wrong job. Now we have this term of quiet quitting, where they're still unhappy, but they're just doing the bare minimum to get by. It's not good for them. It's not good for the company.
Right.
So I think there's no one size fits all in this, especially when you have as many people as we have in the workforce.
Yeah. So as you already work with so many different cultures, right? I mean, different kind of people like boomers, millennials, and Gen Z. I think you are working with all three, right? So
And
how do
alphas.
you, yeah.
We work with people in school as well, high school, who are starting off in their career path. So
Okay, now that's really interesting. So how do you create that work culture I'm talking about, so they all fit in together? Suppose if you know company.
I don't have. Sorry, when you're talking about my own company, I don't have alphas. I have teenage daughters who are involved,
Okay.
but they're not. They're not in the business. We have. Yeah, we have Gen X. We have millennials. We don't have. Well, but boomers not really involved. So really, for me, what was really important is we have a very clear mission of what we're doing. And the mission is to make the world a better place with happy people and fulfilling,
Right.
rewarding careers. We're very clear on what we want to do and why we want to do it.
Hmm.
We have clear core values, which are do the right thing, inclusively empathetic, and humbly proud. And we talk about those things all the time, and we make decisions on the direction of our company based on those core values. And we've let people go because they don't align with those core values. So understanding that we're getting people from different demographics and different geographic regions and different age demographics, as you say, from Gen Z up to Gen X and all the rest of it, we're all aligned on the same thing. Different people bring different strengths. Different people might be slower in adapting some things or might be more resistant to some ideas than others. But so long as we're all rowing in the same direction for the right reasons, the generations can get along better. But this is something which is it is going to be so unbelievably common because the age of retirement is only going to go up because we're living longer. Retirement age was 65 when the average life expectancy was 70. So you only had 5 years. Now it's like in the 90s, and the kids that are coming through now, all of them are going to live to over 100. So 65 is not going to stay the retirement age. It's going to be higher and higher. So you're going to have a really common occurrence in about 15 years' time where you're going to have a 70-year-old working with an 18-year-old. So there's going to be massive generational differences. And how do we get everybody aligned on that? One of the things that I believe in the future of work, I think it's going to be a far more entrepreneurial environment. I think it's going to lend itself that we're not necessarily going to have the same number of these huge almost demigod, Apple, Facebook, Meta, all these huge companies. I think there's going to be a lot more, even of the smaller companies that might have a team of 15, 20 people with a couple of AI agents that are servicing smaller areas where people are becoming aligned and doing what they want to do and having a good income based on what they want to do. And that is going to help companies who are clear on their mission, clear on their vision, and clear on their values.
Right. So these are last rapid fire questions. That is my favorite one. So whatever the first word that you come to your mind, I'll give you the option. Whatever the first word come into your mind, just tell it.
Cool.
Work from home or office?
Both is the first word that comes into my mind, but home.
Okay. Leader or manager?
Leader.
Skill or degree?
Skill.
AI is threat or opportunity?
Opportunity. 100%.
Gen Z is lazy or misunderstood?
Misunderstood.
9 to 5 or flexible?
Flexible.
LinkedIn is real or performative?
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. Performative, yeah.
Performative.
Yeah.
Success is
the amount of people who are delighted to announce something minor that has happened in their life. Yes, performative. Go for it.
Success is money or meaning?
Meaning.
Culture fit or culture add?
I've had such interesting conversations with people around this over the last little while, and for me, it's culture add.
Add, okay. You prefer hustle or balance?
Now, I'm a bit contrarian in this because even though I'm an entrepreneur, I don't like. So I like the term hustle, but I don't like the hustle culture. I think the hustle culture is actually counterproductive, and I think that there needs to be more balance, but balance is not 50-50.
Right.
So for me, you can have both. You can be hustling and have balance, so long as you're hustling at the times you need to hustle, and then you're able to take the time off. So, in because there's only the two options, I'll say balance. But balance is not a 50-50. It is like, there is hustle. You have to have the hustle, but you also have to have the downtime. And balance means different things for different people.
Yeah.
So that's a very long one-word answer for that question.
Even after that, you feel that you are balanced now, new hustle will come.
Yes, I've said everything. Yes, both. Balance.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. It was a really wonderful conversation. Hope you like my questions and hope